to get started, here are some of the goals that I have for the session. So again, just prepare you for interviews and give you tips to really be performing well. So not just prepared for any interview, but really how to shine and stand out within those interviews and some of the key points you don't want to miss. As well, I'd like to talk to you about evaluating the job. So some of the questions that you could ask and the research that you could do along the way to make sure that it is in fact a good fit for you. Because interviews, once you're at the table, you're meant to be there, and it really is an opportunity for you to understand if this company is a good fit as well. All right. Our recorder here so I can see. Great. All right, so here's the full agenda aside from the goals. We're going to go over this piece by piece, and we're just going to start with our first impressions. So aside from these things, we're going to jump right into the first impression. If this is how you're sitting in the waiting room, really any of these 4 options, you're probably not making the best impression. So it doesn't start the moment you shake hands and walk in the door. It really starts on your lead up into that position. So obviously it can be stressful. You can tell some of these folks are kind of stressed out. This guy just, I don't know, this picture just cracks me up. It's like, okay, you're all waiting for the same interview. Typically, you won't be in a lineup like that. It is possible, but oftentimes you'll be in a one-on-one scheduled situation where you won't have to interact with the other candidates. We will talk about different types of interviews where you may be doing a group activity or interacting more in a collective manner. Okay, so these are some of the key points for our interviews. Once again, just adjusting a couple things. That's the fun part about webinars. They're live. All right, so you don't want to fidget while you wait. You want to make sure that you have a firm handshake, so none of this. So a firm handshake. Introduce yourself, so you don't have to do full name and history, but just make sure you clarify, like, I'm Lauren, I'm not the next person in line that you thought might be before me. And then just kind of keep that nice flow going. I would also say be aware of your arrival. So if you're showing up at a parking lot ahead of time, are you parking directly in front of a window where people can see you rehearsing in the car before you go in? That has happened to people before, and it does cause a little bit of embarrassment. So make sure you're there on time ahead of time to get in the door a couple minutes early and be able to calm down and relax and be prepared to walk in. All right, there's our little handshake guy. Okay, so attire is also part of that first impression. I had a student today that asked me a couple different things about what do I do with my hair, what kind of shoes do I wear. It really depends on what type of interview you're going for. So if it's a professional organization where people are typically wearing suits throughout, then you're going to definitely want to match that and wear a suit for your interview. If it's a little bit more laid back, you might be able to get away with something more casual, like the ends on either side of this side kind of show a little bit more of a casual but very professional look. So not full suit, but a nice blouse and or no suit jacket and just a nice button-down shirt and tie. So those are both options. As far as a more heeled shoe or a flat shoe, I think it really depends on you and what do you wear in a typical environment. So if you're comfortable wearing a more heeled or like interesting shoe, if that's your jam, then you can do it. I think just making sure you're feeling comfortable and confident in whatever you are wearing and that it is work appropriate. So nothing like 4 inches high. You can see everyone here has very conservative but nice, well-maintained shoes. All right, so these are, again, typical for more formal work environments, and most interviews would be fine for this. Okay, business casual is another type of attire you might wear. So if you're going for a job at a startup where everybody's running around in sweatshirts and they don't really care what you wear, it's kind of a jeans and bring your dog environment, then something like this business casual look might be appropriate for the interview. But if you don't know, err on the side of more formal interview attire. This is commonly appropriate for everyday wear, but again, it just is per industry dress code. So you can do your research through that. Basically, if you've done a site visit or if you are able to network with someone within the company, maybe reach out to someone either on Alumni Fire or LinkedIn just to get a feel for how they dress and what to expect. Always ask questions. You could even call HR. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to answer questions, I really wanted to address mental prep. This is a big thing, right? So little kitten over here is looking at itself. It's a lion, not a kitten. Sometimes we feel like either side of that mirror, and you just have to know that going into the interview, you want to give your best version of yourself. That can be difficult on some days, but here are a couple different ways that you can tell yourself positive thoughts or even do some physical prep to get yourself there. So, I belong in this room. Tell yourself that. If you have an interview, it is already a success. Not every interview leads to a job offer, but you're going to go in there and you're going to expect that it leads to a job offer because that's how you put everything out on the table. If they didn't want you there, if they didn't want to consider you for the position, if they didn't want you to join the team, they would not invite you to an interview. So if you have an interview, you belong in the room, you belong there. I am prepared. Hopefully this is true, right? So if you've done your work, if you're watching this webinar, then you are taking steps to prepare yourself. I would say it's really helpful to write things down, to practice statements out loud. We're going to get to that a little bit later. And once you've done the work, tell yourself, I'm prepared. I'm the best candidate because. So pick 3 reasons. There are probably a myriad of reasons why you're qualified for this position, interested in this position, and why they should pay attention. But a myriad is hard to quantify. So let's go with 3. It's easy to remember. And think about 3 reasons that you know you are the best candidate and make sure that you have an opportunity to leave those on the table. What I mean by that is have those at the ready for any question that might come up. And make sure, okay, I've gone through my 3 points. So if you're proficient at Excel for the data analyst position, that's going to be one of your points. If you have been substituting in this exact district with long-term subs for the past 7 years, that's going to be a point, right? So think of those things that are really crucial to you and the fit for the job, and make sure that if they don't come up naturally within the interview questions, that you have an opportunity to let them know at the end. This is why I'm most qualified. And also, as you think that, then you can tell yourself those things in the beginning, and that'll help you remember the key points of why you're there and what you want to share. Okay. That went well, right? We forget to tell ourselves that things went well on the other side. We go, we might psych ourselves up, we might be really excited, think it went well, and then walk out of the room and be like, oh no, I thought it went well, but now that it's been a day and I haven't heard anything, I don't know. I didn't eat dinner yet, so now my hangry is kind of making my mind rush a little bit. So just take a deep breath and remind yourself that did go well. You went, you were able to put your 3 things down on the table, and they know why you're a good candidate. Another thing about telling yourself that went well is having that positive mindset about the interaction can carry over and shape the next communication you have with them, whether it's through a thank you email or a thank you note, which I highly recommend, or whether it's through your interaction around a job offer, or whether it's through your next communication with another interview for another job if that one doesn't work out. So make sure those interactions are positive. All right, we mentioned thank yous. Moving on. Physical prep can be just as important. So part of the physical prep is getting dressed, right? So we already went over that. Tend to your hygiene. Make sure that nothing is distracting. So you don't want your hair to be distracting, your breath to be distracting, or your outfit to be distracting. So once you've gotten that all out of the way, you're set, you're ready to go. You can actually do these power poses. So the top row here is an example of power poses. And you can see the main difference is that power poses are open and those non-power poses are very closed. So you're closed off. So try to relax yourself and allow yourself to be open during the interview. That can display a really great body language. You probably don't want to be kicking back like this during your interview. That's probably going to give the wrong tone. But I would recommend picking a power pose and getting big. So I just kind of like starfish. You can also do Wonder Woman or the superhero, kind of however you go about that. And So I'm going to challenge you to do it for 10 seconds right now, even though to get the actual researched benefit, you need to do it for 2 minutes. So we're just going to close our eyes. We're going to do a power pose. No one's watching you. Everyone's watching me. Power pose for 10 seconds. All right. So just for a couple seconds, there's something that really gets my body going with that. And so the research of it is that within those high power motions or those stances, it actually increases testosterone and decreases cortisol. So it's giving us a little boost in power and reducing our stress. I do this before I have to do big presentations or webinars or anything that would otherwise be a kind of stressful situation for me, and it really does help me. So try a power pose. Okay, that's your homework. Now on to kind of the nittier-grittier piece, the interview formats. So we want to talk about the purpose and how to prepare, and then we're going to go over these variety of ones. So I'm just going to keep it here for a second. LinkedIn interview requests are highly common now, and this typically looks like a recruiter or an employer reaching out to you on LinkedIn and saying, hey, we've had a chance to view your profile. We'd really like to set up a time to chat. Do the following times work for you? So if you're at all interested in the industry or the job mentioned, and sometimes they'll be very vague, like we have a job open in this general region, in this general industry. It's worth your time to chat with them and just have a good cordial conversation. They may even know of some other jobs once they chat with you that might be a good fit. So definitely worth it. I've known several students and people in my personal life who have gotten jobs through LinkedIn outreach, and that is a great way to go. I would keep in mind that most recruiters receive a stipend essentially if they reach out to you and then you end up being hired for the position, then that is a win for them monetarily. So they are really good at selling positions. So be prepared to ask questions that you want to know to get down to the fine combing of what the job is, and then go see if you're ready for an interview. Typically, next steps would be initial phone interviews. Sometimes these are now Skype or WebEx interviews. So really, it's the same thing. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but you want to make sure that your hygiene and your outfit is on point. If you are on a video interview, so I'm kind of jumping down to the bottom for video interviews because sometimes they're instead of phones, then you want to make sure that nothing is distracting in your background. Take the video out if you're just on the phone. Just pretend you're sitting there person to person and try to convey your best self. I think it does help even though they cannot see you. If you dress professionally, if you dress the part, you're going to feel like you're the part. So step up to that plate. And don't forget to smile. It makes a big difference. If it's hard to hear intonations or the cadences of someone's voice on the phone, it's really easy for you to come off as monotone, unexcited about the position. So just make sure you're smiling throughout. Ham it up a little bit because it's they need that extra animation just to even it out on the phone. Once you've gone past that, you're typically interviewing with the hiring manager and or key stakeholders of the company. So at a school, that might look like interviewing with maybe a school counselor, the head counselor, and a principal, right? So you're going to get a whole swath of the administration. And you want to be able to speak kind of broadly to all of them. One of the biggest keys here is to maintain eye contact with every one of them. If it's multiple people, they're typically going to rotate who asks a question. So go along with the rotation, but feel free to reference back and make eye contact with everyone as you answer. It's also helpful if you can know who those key stakeholders are. So if it's possible to know ahead of time, then make sure you look them up, do a little bit of information, read their bio on the web page, whatever you can do to kind of draw them into the conversation and let them know, like, hey, I saw you won an award last year for XYZ. That really shows a personal touch and shows that you've done your research and homework into who these people are and who the company is. I'm going to come back to that throughout the thing. That's a really important one. Always know who you're interviewing with, what they're about, and be able to speak to that because that really makes you come out as a strong candidate. Okay. So panel interviews are essentially what I was just talking about as well, like multiple people versus one. So you may meet just one-on-one with a hiring manager, and then you might meet one-on-one with a dean if you're at a university. You might meet one-on-one with a CEO and then meet one-on-one with a sales team, right? So you're going to get a big broad range. And then again, we touched on video interviews. The main thing is to practice that medium. So we actually have a new tool in our office called Standout that we'll be launching this fall. And we'll have videos on YouTube about how to work through Standout. But I would really say practice that video interview there so you get a feel for what it's like. Make sure you have a clean professional background. If you can, check out a conference room. We've done that for students here in the past. There are many rooms within the library that you can check out as well. So if you're on the Redlands campus or if you're at another campus, tuning in to kind of figure out what room has the tech that you would be able to use, or if you just can set up your laptop somewhere that you know you can reserve and that space is yours. That can be very helpful. All right, so that's kind of it for formats. You'll know which one is up to you, and then you'll just want to be as prepared as you can. So we'll get into that with some of these questions. It's really easy to feel like you're fumbling as you're being asked these questions, so try to mediate that a little bit. During the interview segment, this is what they really want to know. They want to hear your qualifications. They don't need your life story, but they do want to know who are you in relation to this position and why is it important for us to know more about you and hire you. They want to assess your listening and communication skills. So do you seem tuned out? Are you not really catching their questions? Are you too nervous to pay attention? Are you able to actually have a conversation during the interview, or is it just kind of a one-sided flat response? They also want to know about your personality and your fit. That's a little bit harder to assess, but essentially they want to know how do you get along with our team and our organization. That depends on different environments. If you're applying for a job that is really autonomous and doesn't have as much teamwork going on, then personality and fit is going to be slightly less important. But if you're going for something with a small team, maybe a nonprofit where you're meeting every day and working towards the same goal, it's going to be really important that they see that you can communicate with them and collaborate with them. Distinguishing qualities, anything that stands out about you. What really shines through that you're passionate about or committed to? And how could those benefit the job? So, are you doing any particular side projects that would be really handy? Have you done research through your master's or undergraduate degree at Redlands that would be really exciting for you to extend at their company? Are you the person to solve their challenges? So this is a tricky one, but if you are really doing your research and you know what field you want to go into, and you've kind of got your finger on the pulse of this company, so you've been reading their Twitter feed, you've been looking at LinkedIn and reading the articles that their people are putting out there, then you're going to know what challenges they faced in the past, where this company might be trying to go and grow in the future. And so it's your job to really be able to tell someone, hey, like I've done this research. I see that you want to grow that you have grown your profit by 15% in the last year. I know I've grown profit at a company by 25%. So I'm ready to jump on board and help you reach that next level. As a business example, sometimes you don't know too much about their challenges until you're really chatting with them within the context of the interview. So then if you're able to address something that comes up as you hear it, that's great. If not, then that might be something you can reference in your thank you note as well. Of, I've been pondering the question or the problem that your organization has with this, and I really think a possible solution might be this, and I'm excited to jump on board and discuss more how I might be an asset. All right. questions. There are some really tricky ones as well that most people get stuck on. So we're going to go through what we kind of call the dreaded funky four and then how to ace those. Okay, so the funky four. Number one, tell me about yourself. Number two, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Number three, what are your salary expectations? And number four, what are your 5-year goals, or what is your plan for the next 5 years? So we're going to go over each one of those individually, and you don't have to be the prepared robot to ace them. All right, so the first one, tell me about yourself. I want to know, who are you? And again, I don't need your entire life story, but the companies really want to know, what are you excited about, right? Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Okay, so if you are, I already used school counseling today, so I'll use it again. If you are a school counseling graduate from the master's program and you are applying for a job at a K through 12 school district, you want to tell them who you are. They already know your name, right? So just remind them, I'm a really active counselor, and here are the organizations that I'm a part of, and this is why I counsel, right? So I'm just earned my master's degree. That's important. I think in mock interviews, students coming from undergrad and master's programs both often kind of skip over the education part in that interview, but that can really set up why are you interested in this position. Or why did you study what you studied? What makes that special, and how can you talk about it and link it to what you're going to now? Right. And then we really need just to bring it around to, why does it matter to the employer, right? So it's that linkage piece. Who are you? What are you doing? Why? And why does it matter to us? So I would recommend you jot those things down and then practice. This is essentially your elevator pitch, right? So you're going to answer most questions in 1 to 3 minutes. I would time yourself, make sure that you're at least hitting that 1 minute mark. Because if you just say, I'm John and I studied English, and I don't know, you're a tech company, so I'm not sure what that does for you, right? Not going to go far. So make sure that you really dig into those and practice them. And we're also, our studio hours are open for you to come practice that type of thing with us. And we can do mock interviews along with the standout mock interviews. Strengths and weaknesses. This one's tricky. It can feel violating in some ways. Like, why do you want to know my inner strengths and my inner weaknesses? I don't want to tell you that I lack confidence for this interview or that I'm shaking in my boots right now. That's not what it's about. So think about taking your own self-critic out of the bubble here and really focusing on specifics for the position. So keep it professional, don't make it personal. That will give you a better answer, and it will also allow you to just feel more confident and better because you're not thinking about your innermost self in the middle of an interview. So a way to do that is thinking about strengths. If you're going for a business data analyst position, a strength might be that you've worked in consulting groups before. Even as an undergraduate, during one of your classes, you were able to do a consulting project with a local business in Redlands, and here are some of the findings, right? And having that consulting angle has allowed you to see things in a whole different way and address some of the problems that come up for businesses. More examples of your work and how you can tie it to experience, the better. For weakness, you might also say something about the tech that you have to use at this company. Maybe it's a little bit different than what you've used before. Now, you don't want to disqualify yourself. So if you're going for this data analyst position, you don't want to just flat out say, I'm no good at Excel, right? They probably need you to be good at Excel. So maybe it's a different program. Maybe you're good at Excel and you're not great at SPSS, which is another quantitative data system. So maybe you need to learn SPSS. So it'd really be great to be able to say, I'm excellent at Excel. I know that one of the qualifications that you have on your job description was to be great and proficient at SPSS. Now I'm just learning that system. I'm newer, so I would say for this position that is one of my weaknesses. However, I've signed up and taken a Linda course so I can learn it, or just give them some example of how you're going to remedy that situation, because then they can see that you have an awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, and you also have the ability to plan and kind of boost and take management of your success and growth. Felt like that was a long answer, but you've got this. Okay. What are your salary expectations? Bottom line, don't give a number. Okay, numbers can be dealt with and should be dealt with in the offer once you have an offer letter. And I would say once you have a written offer, ask for time to review that. So most of the time, if someone says, what are your salary expectations? You can simply say, I am happy to review any reasonable offer. Having said this, you need to know what a reasonable offer should be. So Glassdoor.com and salary.com both give you great opportunities to look at national averages for salaries for different types of jobs, even within region. So whether you live in Kansas City or Birmingham, Alabama, or Los Angeles, right? Then those are all going to be completely different areas with different economies and different local trends and costs of living. So those two websites, salary.com and glassdoor.com, can give you kind of a gauge of what to expect depending on where you're looking for a job. Also, if it's a public company, most of the time you can review salaries so you can get an idea of who makes what at the company to kind of understand what the ballpark range for an entry-level position versus a more advanced position at the company would look like. So have a range in your mind. Know the amount of money you need to meet your actual financial needs, and then the amount of money that you would hope to have for flex, for savings, for life. And then have that range reflected with the research you do so you know you're applying for positions that make your life viable. If they are pushing that, I would say you can offer the range, but really most people will accept that you'd be happy to review any reasonable offer. All right, what are your 5-year goals? This can be tricky because you might be thinking, this is a great entry-level job. I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'll be here for a year or two and learn what I need to learn and move on. That is common, especially currently in our lives with millennials, Gen Z, and even beyond those generations. We're going to be looking at 7 to 14 different careers throughout our lifetime. I have already had at least 2. So there are multiple things that you'll be doing throughout your life. And it's also important to be aware that companies really want to invest in people who are going to stay with them and help them reach the next level and be committed and loyal to them. So in answering this question, think about what you're currently looking to learn and utilize your expertise in. So what can you offer them? And where do you hope to grow, right? So you can say, within the next 5 years, I hope to go from an administrative role maybe to more of a management role and start leading a team. I think right now this is what I really want to learn, and my long-term goal would be this. So if there's an opportunity in this position for me to be able to advance and grow and enhance those skills. I know right now I'll be supervising 1 student employee. If there is at all a possibility within the next 5 years to grow and to be onboarding or training new staff in other capacities, that would help me stay committed to the role. Another long-winded example, but essentially you'll want to let them know that you're here for them, that you're excited about this position, and you hope for opportunities for growth at that company, and that in general you're committed to your own professional growth and you will go where there are opportunities. So hoping that there are opportunities at the site so you can stay. Okay. For each answer that you give, I recommend having an example that you can draw upon. Sometimes this will be a really quick example. And you can even just ground the answer within one of the experiences that are on your resume. So it really just gives it a little bit more of a personality and helps them understand where you're coming from. So to do that, I recommend using the STAR method. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. And once you say those out loud and really chart them down, it can make a big difference in the way you answer questions. So it kind of takes you from, one of the common questions would be, tell me a time that you took initiative to run a program or design an event. How did that go? Right? Okay, so to be specific, we need to know exactly what type of event we're running. How many people is it for? So are we going to run an event for a conference of 500? Great. I want to know what type of conference, right? So immediately I'm going to have questions. So make sure you can say, it was a conference on wilderness first responding and different ways to run outdoor programs. So what was your task, right? Did you have to collect all of the different people to come speak at this conference, or did you just need to set up the chairs, right? So what was your task in the situation? Action, how did you complete that? How did you go about outreaching? How did you go about creating a floor plan that would accommodate everybody's needs? And then the result. Was everyone at the conference on time? Did they feel prepared? Did they have what they need? Did it go off without a hitch? If you did have a hiccup along the way of your planning, how did you resolve that problem? And hoping that the end goal is positive. With anything that you share in your interviews, you want to be able to bring it back to a positive or growth-oriented place. So STAR method will be your friend. We do have some resources on Handshake that will allow you to get further into the STAR method. All right. I've mentioned company research multiple times. So here are some of the things you can focus on that will help you do your research. What do they do? You should probably know that, right? So if you're going to apply to ESRI, what do? Well, they definitely specialize in global information software. How do they go about that? What is their reach? Start digging. Look at the ESRI software. If you're applying for a job working with the software side, you want to know how to use it, right? Give examples of where you've seen it. ESRI, as an example, hosts open houses that are just wide open to the public to go view some of their software and see what they're doing as a company each year. That is amazing. That is a great opportunity to learn about the company. So if you have your eye on the next transition place, keeping an eye on the events that they have that are open to the public would be a great way to learn. So you also want to know about the key responsibilities of the jobs and who are the key players. So who leads ESRI versus who is on the ground implementing the software engineer, doing the research, even writing a human resource paper, right? So there's always different sections within each company. You want to kind of know how they work together. So industry, reputation, and expectations. How are they driving the global information systems world? They have huge conferences down in San Diego every year. So what other types of companies go to those conferences, and how are they collaborative versus competitive? And then X factors. What are some of the perks about working for that company that make you want to apply? They are very bike friendly. So there's actually a bike garage in the parking garage, right? So I think they give an employee incentive for riding your bike to work. So if that's something that you already do, or if you want to strive for a healthier lifestyle or a bike-focused lifestyle, then that's something that's cool. Thinking about locations, if you want to stay down by Redlands, then you know this could be a company for you. And looking at ratings across the board. Thinking about company culture, Amazon, oddly enough, is a very dog-friendly company. So if you want to be able to bring your dog to work, think about different cultures that exist there. Some companies have very open floor plans where it's a collaborative space. You kind of all know what everybody else is doing. That might be appealing to you, or you might be someone who's really hoping for your designated cubicle or your designated office, depending on what type of job you have to do, what type of phone calls you have to field, that sort of thing. So those are all little bits of information that you can gather. if you can use your thumbs to text, you can use your thumbs to Google. Google is a great place to start with all of these. Just generally look it up. There are a lot of websites out there that if you say like company culture at Google, right, you'll get all kinds of articles from Forbes, from the Muse, from Balance, that give you insight into the different aspects. I would also say utilize our network of Bulldogs, past and present, to get a feel for if anyone has worked at these companies, reach out and ask them what it was like. So again, Alumni Fire and LinkedIn are great ways to do that. And we have information about how best to reach out to people on Handshake. More resources. So I mentioned Google, and we've talked about Glassdoor and LinkedIn, personal social media accounts, so reaching out to people that you know and people within your network, looking at those personal pages for the people that you want to meet or that you know will interview you. They're probably looking you up, so feel free to look them up as well, especially on LinkedIn. That's the most professional spot to kind of do that networking. I would also say with that, see what comes up when you Google yourself, just as a, want to mediate any issues that you see that don't reflect you the way you want to be seen. Listen to TED Talks or read trade publications. Barry Godboss is another one that's kind of like Glassdoor and LinkedIn, except for it's marketed towards women. So it's all about, the pay gap and how do we as women look at things differently. What else do we need to know? What companies are creating benefits that are helpful. Okay, so those are all good ways to go about your research. And then at the end, typically an employer will say, what other questions do you have for us? And this is really a time for you to always be prepared with these questions. This is not a time to say, nope, everything's fine. This is really where you have an opportunity to show that you've done your research. So again, we've talked about this a fair amount throughout, so I won't go too in depth, but you can ask about key responsibilities. So maybe what does a day on the job look like for this position? Or for someone working for a school district, is this a site-specific position or is this a position that works with every school within your district? Organization and culture. So again, is it more of a hierarchy? Get to know the organizational culture and how people can progress throughout the company. That's kind of the next steps in timeline as well, right? Like, okay, well, that's a little different. So what I was thinking is more like getting yourself onboarded, right? So thinking about what are my opportunities for growth at this company? What do you provide for professional development? Here are some of the things I've been involved in the past. Would I be able to be involved in or enhance my involvement with these organizations at your company? Getting a feel for who is their ideal candidate and can you speak to that? Expectations for your first 30 to 90 days or even the first year on the job. That can be really helpful to get a feel for how much direct training you'll have versus if they're just going to toss you in and see how you do. And then next steps and timeline is very logistics. thinking about thank you for the interview and when can I expect to hear back, or what are the next steps with the hiring process. Those are all great questions, and you can ask questions within each of those categories or beyond. If there's something you're really excited about, or if you're sitting in front of someone who is the CEO of a company and you've read all of the books that they've written and you just have this burning question about some of the ways that they see the company growing within 5 years, right? Ask those questions. Show that you've done that research and that you're tuned into that. All right. So first of all, thank you for being here for the webinar today. I know there's a lot of information, but I also would remind you to seriously take the time to thank your interviewers. And this can be a handwritten card or an email to all of your interviewers. Some people will compare interview thank you cards. So try not to be too generic. It might be nice to kind of spread it out a little bit or cite very specific things throughout. All right, So once again, research the company and the type of interview so you can be as prepared as possible. Practice writing down and verbalizing your answers, and psych yourself up for success. Don't psych yourself out. Here are some of the resources we have. Again, this PowerPoint will be available. We can make it available on Handshake. And then I just wanted to highlight a couple ways to engage with our office. You have our contact information there on the bottom. And you can always explore our website for up-to-date information about studio hours. Those do change every term dependent on staff availability. So I do recommend you check out our website to see the studio hours. Feel free to drop by. If you're not local to Redlands, you are also welcome to WebEx in. So just email ocpd@redlands.edu if you can't come to our campus, and we'll get you set up with what you need. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.